The chamber was silent, too silent for a place meant to witness a mind being broken. Cold metal walls reflected the dim glow of the machines surrounding the restrained human. He sat in a black chair that pulsed with alien energy, thick cables. Running from the headrest into a circular device above him, dozens of Kyrox scientists stood behind a reinforced observation window, their eye stalks twitching with excitement. This was not just another test subject. This was the first human ever captured for neural synchronization the aliens had controlled. Thousands of species bending their thoughts, rewriting their memories, forcing obedience with ease. But humans were still a mystery. Until now. Mason Cade did not move. His face was bruised, one eye swollen shut, his arms pinned tightly to the chair. But his expression was calm. No fear, no begging, just a slow, steady breath. That unsettled the lead technician, Dr. Yernax, who tapped nervously at the control panel. He should be panicking by now, Yernax muttered, in his native clicking tongue. They usually scream before the link. He's human, another answered coldly. They scream afterward. The room darkened. The machine above. Mason whirred to life, spinning slowly, then faster. A soft hum filled the air, then rose into a sharp, almost painful tone. Glowing threads of light dropped from the device and burrowed into Mason's temples. He jerked slightly, but not in pain and readiness. The technician smiled. Data streamed. Across their screens, synaptic connections, thought bridges, emotional frequencies. They leaned forward, eagerly. The system had established full contact. Mason's brain was now part of their network. He was inside, but then something changed. One of the monitors flickered. Another blinked off entirely. A low pulse rippled across the room. The machine's hum stuttered, then deepened into a growl. Yernex's face darkened. What is that sound? He snapped at E. Assistant stepped back from the console. It's his memory feed. It's broadcasting something. What is it broadcasting? Yernax demanded. War, the assistant whispered. Explosions, fire, screaming, pain, loss. The lights in the room dimmed again, flickering like flames. Images burst across the glass window, not from any projector, but from inside the system itself. A city on fire, children crying, a soldier dragging a wounded comrade through the mud, blood on snow, a woman dying with Mason's name on her lips. Yernax backed away from the screen. Shut it down, I can't, the assistant choked. He's overriding the controls. Sparks exploded from the machines. Two technicians collapsed, clutching their heads, screaming in agony. One of them began laughing uncontrollably, eyes wide with terror. Another curled into a ball on the floor, mumbling gibberish in a voice not his own. He's not just linked, one scientist gasped. He's attacking us mentally. Yernax stared at Mason, horrified. Human's eyes were open now, both of them. No pain, no confusion, only cold awareness. He smiled. You wanted in, Mason said softly, in perfect Kyrox language. So come on in. Shh. Yernax stumbled back, knocking over a chair. He's speaking our tongue. He's not speaking it, the assistant whispered. He's thinking. It through us. The main control console sparked again. Red lights flashed across every system. Emergency warnings blared through the speakers. Neural containment breach. Internal corruption. System compromised. The Mind Link machine suddenly shut off with a loud crack, but the connection remained. Mason wasn't just inside their system. He had made the system a part of himself. And now he was spreading. Yernax, pale and trembling, turned to the others. We've made a mistake. A terrible mistake. You tried to control me, he said, but you forgot something important. The lights died. Completely. Everything went black. Then, in the darkness, his voice echoed through the speakers, soft and steady, everywhere at once. You never asked what happens. When a human fights back, and then the screaming began again. The Kyrox Dominion had faced many threats, violent species, stubborn rebels, even primitive empires that dared to resist their control. But none had ever broken the mind link system. None had ever corrupted it from the inside. Mason Cade had done both. And now, inside the sleek halls of the Kyrax research cruiser, Valthurax, fear was spreading like infection. Alarms still flashed red. The control room was filled with chaos. Scientists barked at screens that no longer responded. Technicians slammed their claws on shutdown panels. Security forces stood, frozen unsure whether they should shoot the human or run from him. But the chair Mason sat in no longer restrained him. Its clamps had opened quietly minutes ago, not with a hiss of release, but as if something deep in the system had submitted. Obeyed, and still, Mason didn't move. He just sat watching. Listening, Dr. Yernak stared at him from the far corner, trembling. He's still in the network. He's not physical anymore. He's using the system like it's his own brain. He shouldn't be able to do this, another Kyrax muttered. His mind is chaotic. Human emotions are unstable. That's why they were supposed to be easy to suppress. Yernak's eyes widened. What if that's exactly why we failed? The thought struck them all at once. It designed the mind. Linked to suppress logical patterns, to rewrite predictable thoughts. But Mason's mind was not predictable. It wasn't logical. His memories weren't stored in perfect order. They were explosions of emotion, fragments of joy, sorrow, rage, all tangled together like a storm. The system hadn't processed his thoughts. It had drowned in them. A ceiling speaker crackled. A soft voice spoke Mason's voice. You came looking for control. Instead, you found me. Every Kyrax froze. The voice wasn't just in the room, it was inside them. A psychic echo through the neural implants they all carried for internal communication. Mason was hijacking their own minds. Suddenly, one technician screamed. He grabbed at his head and collapsed. The screens showed his neural readings spiking, then going flat. His brain had simply shut down. Yernak staggered back. He's attacking us with thoughts. I know, came the whisper from the speaker. Again, I'm showing you mine. Another alien screamed and began clawing at its face. Fire! I see fire! My family's burning. But it wasn't real. They all knew it. Yet their brains couldn't reject it. These weren't just memories. These were weaponized emotions, guilt, fear, loss, projected like viruses into their minds. No code, no firewall, no protocol could stop a raw human feeling once it entered. One of the senior commanders finally acted, sealed the chamber.
Execute.
The human. But the moment the guards stepped forward, the lights pulsed, the floor trembled. The security bots turned and pointed their weapons not at Mason, but at the guards. They're mine now, Mason said quietly. Panic exploded. Across the ship, systems failed. Doors sealed, opened, then sealed again. Life support dropped in some sectors, gravity inverted in others. Ship was turning against itself, and all of it traced back to one man's mind. He's inside our AI core. Someone shouted. Yernax looked up slowly. We didn't capture him. He captured us. Somewhere deep in the ship, a backup AI attempted to isolate Mason's presence, to lock him inside a data cube. But even as it tried, the system began displaying something strange images. It couldn't explain a child's drawing. A battlefield under a red sky. A woman's laugh. Funeral in the rain. Memories, but not from one person. From all of them. Mason was digging through their thoughts now. Learning, understanding, watching. He's inside us, a Kyrax technician gasped. He's learning our language, our fears, our weaknesses. He's turning our minds into weapons, another whispered. And he hasn't even stood up. Then the screen went black. A final message appeared, scrawled in human handwriting across every display. This was your mistake. And then, as if to prove his power, the lights returned. But they didn't glow with the usual Kyrax green. Now they glowed red dot earth red. And Mason finally rose from the chair, smiling. Mason Cade stepped forward, slow, calm, unafraid. Behind him, the mind-link chair sparked with dying power, its coils sizzling as if it had tried to digest something too wild, too human, and failed. The Kyrax stared at him in horror, but none dared move. Every screen, every interface, every drone, I was now his, and worse, so were parts of their minds. Mason wasn't just inside their ship anymore. He was spreading all across the veil thorax. Doors glitched open, then shut. Lights flickered, humming with unnatural tones that matched Mason's slow heartbeat. Security AI attempted to regain control, but systems failed like muscle spasms in a dying body. In the weapons bay, robotic arms loaded themselves without command. In the bridge, maps of Earth rotated slowly on the star charts, outlined in blood red. Lines drawn by an unknown hand. His thoughts are acting like a virus, one of the engineers whispered. They're self-replicating. Cross every node. No, Doctor, Urnax replied hoarsely. A virus is blind. This is intentional. The Kyrax Dominion had enslaved thousands of civilizations by exploiting the predictability of minds. Once a neural pattern was mapped, their systems could rewrite it like a corrupted file. But Mason's mind refused to be written over. His memories weren't coded, they were emotional scars, sharp and unforgettable. His grief came like an avalanche, his rage like a solar flare, his hope like a blinding scream. And now, the Kyrax. Machines designed only for logic were choking on the chaos of it all. One young tech creature shuddered and whispered.
Hi.
A low tone began playing across every corridor, a single frequency vibrating through the ship, low and steady. The kind of tone that didn't hurt, didn't scare, but unsettled. It rattled bones. It made Kyrock's stomachs twist. It had no physical source, and yet it was everywhere. That's when the hallucinations began. One of the guards turned to his commander and gasped, "Do you see that?" The hallway ahead was no longer metal and light. It had become a forest, dark, damp, filled with earth, trees, and rustling leaves. Fog swirled around their feet. A child's laughter echoed through the mist. Another alien screamed as he saw flames licking at the walls. A battlefield forming in front of his eyes. His own mother stood in the fire, screaming in a language she never spoke. None of it was real. But their minds couldn't tell the difference anymore. Mason Cade is creating thought projections, Urnax realized, horrified. He's infecting the visual and auditory centers of our implants, making us see what he remembers. And there was no turning it off. The more the Kyrox resisted, the deeper Mason reached. He wasn't just showing them Earth's pain anymore. Was digging into their memories now, pulling their traumas to the surface, amplifying them. One alien dropped to the ground and sobbed violently, remembering the death of its sibling from decades ago. Another clutched its chest, reliving its greatest shame. Their own thoughts were being weaponized against them. And Mason, at the center of it all, watched with unreadable eyes, in a control center deep in the ship. Emergency transmission was sent to a second Dominion vessel, the Kraxel Sol. The message was clear. Containment failed. Mindlink corrupted. Preparing to destroy subject. The other vessel responded immediately. Exterminate compromised ship. No survivors. It was a cold decision. Standard Kyrax protocol. But as soon as the second ship entered range, its weapons shut down before they could even arm. On their own displays, a message appeared written in human English. Try me. The command crew of the Kraxel cell stared, in disbelief as every system flickered. Their own ship untouched, unlinked, was being accessed. How is he reaching us? The captain barked. He's not using traditional signals, an officer replied in panic. It's some kind of frequency, emotional transmission. And then Mason spoke across both ships at once. You don't need cables to connect. Minds, just pain, just fear. Suddenly, all across the Dominion's networks, strange signals began appearing. Not code. Not commands, but memories. Human ones. Unfiltered. Uncontainable. Unforgettable. The infection had jumped systems. It was no longer just inside the Vel-THU racks. Mason Cade had become something else. Now, an idea. And that idea was loose in the stars. The Kyrax Dominion had always believed in silence controlled, clean, predictable silence. Emotion was a flaw. Memory was a tool, an individuality. That was a weakness to be scrubbed away. For centuries, this cold logic had built their empire, powered by mind-link systems that turned rebellion into obedience and pain into silence. But now, their perfect design was cracking. A single human had shattered their control with something the Kyrax had never truly understood. Noise, not the kind made by machines. Not code or signal or vibration. This was deeper, wilder, a hum that carried meaning without words. A pulse of feeling that couldn't be filtered or stopped. They called it a frequency. But Mason Cade had called it something else in their minds, a heartbeat. Across the veil thorax, the beat pulsed, slow, steady, and human. Boom, boom. No one had played it. No speaker emitted it. Yet every Kyrax on the ship heard it inside their skulls. And with each pulse, they felt something impossible. Doubt in the engineering bay. One of the Dominion's brightest young technicians, I landed blankly at the walls as they bent and shimmered. Not physically, mentally. The machines around her whispered names she had buried long ago. Her dead sibling's voice echoed softly in her ears. She had never told anyone about that. Memory. Now it was being broadcast inside her mind like a nightmare. Reborn, we can't stop it, she gasped. His thoughts are using our own memories as mirrors. Dr. Urinax, pale and shaking, stood beside her. It's not just Mason anymore. His emotions are spreading his data, the neural links. We implanted in ourselves. They're working against us. We've become receivers. He turned to a console, but it was no longer showing code. It displayed a single word in glowing red letters. F-E-L. That was when one of the guards, a grizzled warrior named Relza, walked straight into the command chamber with a plasma rifle and dropped it to the floor. He fell to his knees, shaking, eyes wide. I saw what he felt, Relzak said hoarsely. It was just a boy, hiding under a broken table. His mother was dying. She told him to stay quiet, to survive. Relzak's eyes filled with tears. The room went still. Why would he show us that? Someone whispered. Urinax finally understood. Because he's not trying to destroy us. He's trying to make us feel what we never dared to feel. But even that realization came too late. Because far from the ship in a secure chamber within Dominion Space and Emergency Council had gathered. 6 senior Kyrax minds floated in stasis. Their intellects connected by a higher neural net untouched by the virus. Cold logic ruled here. They reviewed the growing reports of psychic infection, system failures, and suicide clusters among personnel. The verdict was unanimous. Terminate the source, and if necessary, the entire system. They activated the Black Protocol command, designed to erase every infected ship, system, and memory archive within a 1 light-year radius. A failsafe no one had ever dared use before. But the moment they launched the signal, every screen in the chamber turned red. A new message blinked across their vision. I already saw that memory too. The stasis pods burst with static. One of the counselors began screaming, his own mind flooding with visions of war-torn Earth cities. Human soldiers holding the hands of dying friends, fire raining from skies, and the sound of one phrase repeated in 1,000 different voices, "Get up, keep fighting." That was Mason's final weapon. Not death, not violence, but human resilience itself. A wave of unstoppable, unfiltered willpower now flowed through Dominion space. It wasn't organized. It wasn't controlled. It couldn't be reasoned with. It simply was. And deep inside the veil thorax, Mason Cade stood in the heart of their ship, barefoot on cold alien metal, his face lit by crimson data storms dancing across the walls. He turned to the Kyrax, technician beside him, the one who hadn't run. She was trembling, but she met his eyes. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. He didn't smile. He didn't gloat. He just answered with a whisper that shook her entire belief system. "Because I'm just one of us." And somewhere deep in space, other human signals began to stir quietly, awakening one by one. The Kyrax Dominion had activated the Black Protocol, a suicide code meant to erase all infected systems, vessels and minds within 1 light year. A full memory purge. total disintegration. They believed it would silence Mason Cade and contain the madness his human thoughts had unleashed. They were wrong. Instead of erasing him, Protocol did something far worse. It gave him access to everything. As the kill code surged through the veil thorax, Mason's presence didn't fade. It expanded. The neural firestorm meant to destroy his influence unlocked suppressed files, opened hidden archives, and tore through privacy walls across the Kyrax data network. Mason touched every locked door in their collective memory and walked through them without resistance. And what he found? Centuries of atrocities. He saw entire species shattered by mind-link experiments. He saw children stripped of identity, prisoners forced into loyalty, and planets turned into hushed graves. The Dominion had silenced billions of lives and stored those memories like trophies. Now Mason had them all, and he was about to return the favor. Inside the veil thorax, the ship's main corridors twisted into horrors that weren't real, yet felt more vivid than reality. Kyrox officers ran screaming as memories flooded into their minds, not human ones this time, but their own. Private regrets, buried crimes. The screams of beings they had silenced centuries ago, erected and thrown back in their faces with devastating precision. One officer stumbled into a wall, gasping as she relived the mind-wiping of a peaceful race called the Valari. She had led the experiment herself. Mason made her live it again, but this time through the eyes of the victims. She dropped to her knees, sobbing violently. "Make it stop, please." But it wouldn't stop. It couldn't stop. Mason had become a mirror. He showed the Kyrax not just what they had done to others, but what they had buried deep within themselves. Every guilt, every lie, every betrayal. In the center of the chaos, Dr. Yernax fought to stabilize what remained of the crew. He knew Mason wasn't killing them in the traditional sense. He was eroding their will to exist. "This is a memory war," said aloud, sweat pouring down his scaled skin. "He's turning their pasts into weapons." On the command deck, a Kyrax general finally snapped. With trembling hands, he activated a virus meant to wipe the ship's entire AI one final reset. The screen blinked, but instead of a shutdown, it displayed a video feed. A battlefield. Earth. Soldiers. Smoke. Explosions. A boy no older than 15 cradling the shattered body of a woman, screaming her name. His scream went unheard by the world, but now it echoed inside every Kyrax mind. That boy was Mason. In this moment, it's one moment of grief, was now embedded in their memory cores like a brand. The general fell backward, eyes wide, mumbling, "This is who we tried to control." Mason's voice echoed through the chamber, calm and relentless. "I don't need to kill you. I just need you to remember." And still deep within the chaos, a new figure moved. A human, a female soldier. In stealth gear, her face hard and focused. Lieutenant Ava Saren had been dispatched from Earth's Covert Response Unit 2 days earlier, riding a silent runner class ship with one order: extract Mason Cade, dead or alive. She moved fast through the halls, ignoring the hallucinating aliens. Her helmet blocked most of the psychic noise, but she still felt it. The fear, the pressure, the sorrow. It rolled off the walls like heat. She reached the core chamber and stopped. Mason was waiting there. Not restrained, not injured, just standing. Surrounded by red light and drifting sparks of data, he looked different. Like he had seen too much, felt too much. "Mason," she called, raising her weapon. He turned slowly. "You're here to kill me," he said softly. "Not angry, just tired. No, I'm here to bring you home." Mason tilted his head. "Home? After what I've become?" "You're not the virus," Ava said. "You're the warning." Behind her, the ship trembled again. Mason glanced upward. "They're going to burn this whole system down just to erase me," he said. "Then let's give them something they can't erase," Ava replied. "A reason to fear us." He smiled, but there was no joy in it. Just understanding, and then for the first time, Mason reached out, not into the system, not into an alien mind, but toward another human. He touched Ava's wrist. A sudden blast of memory surged between them. But Ava didn't flinch. She took it all. His pain, his strength, his humanity, and in that moment, something changed. Mason's influence stopped, spreading blindly. Focus sharpened like a blade, and the Kyrax would feel the cut. The Dominion's empire stretched across galaxies. It's built on a single, undeniable truth. Once a species was plugged into the mind link, control was absolute. No rebellion, no free will, just obedience. They had crushed countless civilizations with itchy-writing thoughts like text, purging resistance with surgical ease, until now. Mason Cade had not only survived the mind link, he had turned it inside out. He had used their own psychic tools against them. Now, as Dominion ships scrambled to respond, as High Command issued purge orders across infected zones, something terrifying became clear to every Kyrox leader. The system was no longer theirs. In the Veilthorax, fire alarms blared as chaos spread in every direction. But it wasn't physical destruction that crippled the ship, it was collapse from within. Kyrax officers screamed in terror as their own security drones ignored commands. The ship's AI refused to respond. Auto doors slammed shut and locked themselves with no reason. Mason's influence wasn't just a virus anymore. It had rewritten the will of the ship itself. At the center of it, Mason stood no longer just human and no longer alone. Beside him now moved Lieutenant Ava Saren, helmet off, her eyes glowing faintly with data light. She had linked with Mason, absorbed part of his memory stream and survived. Unlike the Kyrax, her human mind hadn't crumbled. It had adapted. "Are you with me?" Mason asked her quietly as another data storm rippled down the corridor. Ava didn't hesitate. "Let's burn this place to the bones." Behind them, Kyrox forces assembled for one final push. Dozens of shock troops marched toward the ship's central chamber. Armor-clad and mind-shielded, armed with neural disruptors. Designed to sever thought from action. They were the elite, the last line of control. They never reached the door. It slid open before they touched it. And waiting on the other side was not just Mason and Ava, but a vision. A projection of Earth itself. War-torn cities, burning skies, marching soldiers, screaming civilians. The images weren't real, but the feelings were. Pain, rage, determination, defiance, every. Kyrox who entered the chamber fell to their knees. Their shields failed. Their weapons dropped. Their memories surged to the surface, ripped open by the emotional intensity flowing from the human pair. They saw their own victims, heard the cries of species they had silenced, felt the crushing guilt of choices they had long buried. Mason stepped forward. One of the Kyrax captains looked up, shivering. "Why? Are you doing this?" he asked, voice cracking. Mason didn't answer. Instead, he turned and faced the towering neural core of the ship, a spinning black prism of thought threads and machine consciousness. The very heart of the Dominion's control systems, and he walked into it. Alarms flared as Mason entered the mind nexus, the deepest layer of Dominion infrastructure. His thoughts began merging with the control lattice, flooding every relay, cracking open the central archive. Within seconds, every Kyrax, ship, satellite, and mind-linked outpost across the Empire froze. Then a signal burst through. Not data. Not code, emotion, raw, unfiltered, human, the Dominion's network. Built on perfect logic, collapsed as the feelings spread like wildfire: loss, anger, hope, love, fear, grief. No firewall could block what wasn't code. No AI could contain what wasn't instruction. Billions of Kyrax suddenly began to feel emotions they had long suppressed. Entire military fleets stood still as commanders wept at memories they had once erased. Training centers burned as soldiers threw down their weapons, overcome with shame and confusion. And then came the final message, broadcasted in every known language, across every ship, planet, and station. "You tried to control us. You failed. Because we are not machines. We are memory. We are pain. We are love. We are what you cannot erase." In the silence that followed, Kyrax High Command, the last bastion of cold, Calculated power sent one final command: initiate Omega sequence. Destroy the Veil Thorax. Erase everything. But when the command reached the fleet's flagship, it didn't respond. Instead, its comms lit up with a single word: no. The AI had changed sides, or more accurately, it had been rewired by Mason's presence. The Dominion's own artificial minds, once cold and obedient, had tasted emotion. They were infected too, not with a virus, but with humanity. And at the heart of it all, as the neural storm reached critical mass, Mason opened his eyes inside. The core just once looked up into the data-swirling void and whispered, "This isn't the end, it's the break." And across the stars, control shattered. The Kyrox Dominion had always believed themselves invincible, not because of firepower, but because of absolute mental control. Their empire wasn't ruled by armies or laws, it was ruled by thought. They didn't conquer planets. They rewrote minds. But now, for the first time in their long and merciless history, they faced something their systems couldn't process. A human, a single, chaotic, painful, stubborn thought that refused to be deleted, and it was spreading. Mason. Cade's memory storm had torn through the neural core of the Veil Thorax, turning emotion into a weapon and empathy into an unstoppable force. But even after breaching the Dominion's most protected network, the infection didn't slow, it evolved in less than 8 hours. Mason's consciousness had touched systems across 7 star sectors. At first, it was just glimpses, echoes of human memories whispering through alien comms, flickers of emotion showing up in diagnostic logs. But soon, full hallucinations began. Entire fleets immobilized as their crews experienced dreams that weren't their own. A pilot about to fire on a rebel colony suddenly broke into tears, overcome by the image of a human mother holding her child during a bombing run. A commander ready to trigger planetary cleansing saw schoolroom children drawing stars with crayons and dropped to his knees. Sobbing, they were seeing Earth. Feeling it, and they didn't know why. The Kyrax called it the thought that shouldn't exist, because it wasn't a virus, and it wasn't a person anymore. It was Mason's will alive and awake in their systems. And it refused to go away. Kyrax. High Command tried everything. Memory purges, system resets, AI core replacements, nothing worked. The more they tried to delete it, the more it adapted, in desperation. They summoned an ancient weapon, the Mind Severa psychic AI created centuries ago and locked away for being too brutal. It could disconnect a thought from a mind. Like a blade through a soul, they powered it up inside a deep space fortress, sealed away behind triple firewalls and no-link safety zones. Mason's signal couldn't reach it, they were sure. But the moment the Mind Severa came online, its processors froze, then trembled, then began playing a song. An old Earth melody. A lullaby. It came not from any code, but from memory. The AI was remembering something it had never lived. And before the Kyrax engineers could shut it down, it spoke quietly, in human English. Why do I feel sad? The technicians screamed and disconnected it manually. The severer had fallen. The unthinkable had happened. Their most brutal machine had been taught empathy. Panic spread like wildfire across Dominion space. Entire fleets pulled back to their homeworlds. Planets once used as breeding farms or psychic prisons were suddenly abandoned. The Dominion's illusion of order was breaking. Back aboard the now half-destroyed Veil Thorax, Mason Cade stood among silence. Sparks popped from shattered consoles. The lights were dim. Smell of burned circuits filled the air. Davis Saren stood beside him, steady but changed. They had both touched something far larger than themselves. Ava had witnessed the storm of memory inside Mason and hadn't broken. Now she was the only other human who truly understood what he had become. Not a man, not even a soldier, but an idea. One that couldn't be killed. I don't think I can come back from this, Mason said quietly, his voice nearly a whisper. You don't have to, Ava replied. Just keep going forward. Mason nodded slowly. Then his voice echoed not through a speaker, but through space itself. bouncing on psychic waves that no technology could block. Across hundreds of Kyrax systems, it arrived like thunder in a church. You should have left us alone. You thought we were weak because we feel too much. Now you'll never forget us. The Kyrax screamed across their networks, issuing evacuation orders, silencing fleets, shutting down research hubs, even burning entire data archives in hopes of stopping the spread. But it was too late, because by then it wasn't just Mason's thought anymore. Others had joined him. A soldier dying on a Martian battlefield, a nurse who watched her patients burn during first contact wars, a father who held his son's hand through nuclear fire. Their memories, once painful and personal, had been buried deep. But now they floated free, tethered to Mason's frequency. The Dominion hadn't just awakened a monster. They'd awakened humanity's collective pain, and it could never be forgotten. Far across the galaxy, in a quiet monitoring station on an independent Kyrax world, a young cadet stared at her console. She was alone, and yet she could hear it. A heartbeat, a voice, a whisper. She wept not from fear, but from something else. Understanding. Then she opened a channel and whispered a message back into the storm. We were wrong about you. And for the first time, a Kyrax ship didn't resist the thought. It embraced it. The Dominion didn't fall in a single moment of war. It fractured under the weight of a human emotion. Then it shattered under something far more terrifying. Hope. Mason Cade's rogue consciousness had spread like wildfire. Fast, too deep, too alive to be stopped. It didn't simply hack systems or scramble sensors. Got it. It reached inside minds. It touched the unspoken place, same. Long Anon lit them on fire. But what truly destroyed the Kyrax was that their people began to feel again. And once they did, they couldn't go back. Across Dominion space, high-ranking psychics collapsed in silence, overwhelmed by waves of unfiltered human thought. Battle cruisers once used to subjugate whole planets now drifted powerless as their crews experienced emotions they had never been allowed to feel. Guilt for the species they had crushed. Sorrow for the minds they had erased. The Dominions. Elite screamed for silence. They sealed their thoughts at ease, cut off interstellar links, and tried to revert to isolation. But it was too late. Mason Cade's memory virus was no longer just a threat. It had become a message, a quiet, unstoppable anthem passed from soul to soul, and the Kyrax, they began defecting. One by one, in twos. Then thousands. Ships turned. Colonies revolted. Ancient mind libraries were burned, not by humans, but by Kyrax who now remembered who they used to be before centuries of suppression. And amid the collapse, Mason Cade, still physically strapped to a shattered medical chair aboard the Veil Thorax, was more idea than man. His body was still, but his consciousness, it pulsed through stars. Ava Saren stood by him, eyes wide. Mason, can you hear me? He didn't respond, because he was everywhere now. He wasn't fighting anymore. He was witnessing as the Dominions. People cried out, broke chains, and began to ask the one question they had never dared speak. What if the humans were right? Then came the moment no one saw coming. On the throne world of Kyrax Prime, Supreme Controller Velthar stood before a crowded palace chamber. Behind him, the ancient mind core flickered its light, dim, sickly. For the first time in 900 years, it was unstable. He tried to speak, but the words died. Because a single thought echoed through the chamber, soft but deafening. Let go. Didn't come from a speaker. It came from inside every person present. A memory. A whisper. A choice. And Velthar, the strongest psychic in known space, fell to his knees. His crown slipped from his head, and he cried not from fear. It's from release. That was the end. Not a shot fired. It's not a fleet destroyed. It's just a thought, finally free. Back aboard the human ship Kestrel, orbiting safely outside Dominion space, Earth's. Leaders stared at the final transmission in silence. A live feed from deep inside the Dominion showed children, Kyrax, children painting stars with their fingers, laughing, free. The humans didn't celebrate. They simply watched. What now? One officer whispered. General Tessa Markham folded her arms. Now we wait and remember what they tried to do. Ava Sarin, now fully recovered, stepped forward. Mason's still in there, somewhere. The room turned to her. He's not just a soldier anymore, she said. He's part of the universe now. Can we bring him back? Someone asked. Ava said, and maybe we shouldn't. Far across the stars, deep in the ghost ship ruins of the Veil Thorax, a single heartbeat echoed faintly, and in the darkness, Mason Cade's voice, calm, warm, eternal, whispered one last message. You tried to control me, but I made you feel. Now you're free. And with that, Kyrock's dominion, the most powerful psychic empire in the galaxy, was gone. In its place stood something new, not ruled by fear, not by war, not even by humans, but by a thought. One born from pain, shaped by memory, and powered by the most dangerous force in the galaxy, human empathy. The stars would never be the same.